The scent he felt wasn't mine, but it was on me. Ancestral, like forbidden blood rushing through hidden veins. "No one approaches the Alpha King," they whispered, as the doors of the royal hall opened and his eyes, those eyes of contained storm, landed on me with the weight of a destiny I never asked for. The entire court fell silent. My stepmother paled, her nails digging into the flesh of her own hand. "You," he said, his voice tearing through the silence like a drawn sword. "You carry something that belongs to me." And then, before everyone, he extended his hand to me. "Before we dive into this story, leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 10 and tell us what city you're tuning in from. May this moment bring reflection and emotion to your heart." I woke to the distant sound of bells. The air in the room was thick, dense with dust and silence. The doorknob remained still, locked from the outside, and the light filtering through the crack in the window brought the pale gold of morning. The morning of the ceremony. My ceremony? Or, at least, it would have been, had my stepmother not decided I wasn't worthy of being among the nobles waiting in the great hall. The wood beneath my feet was cold. My dress crumpled on the chair, the only one I owned. I remember how she glared at me the night before, her eyes brimming with contempt, her sharp words whispered between clenched teeth. "You don't belong there." She said it as if delivering a sentence. I should have been used to rejection, but some pains never become bearable. Some silences scream. Through the wall I heard the hurried footsteps of the maids, the crackle of rekindled embers, and the distant murmur of arriving guests. Each sound was a blow, and yet something within me insisted on standing tall, as if there was an ancestral stubbornness in my blood, a small flame that humiliation couldn't extinguish. The smell of the flowers adorning the courtyard reached me, sweet and cruel. They announced the start of the ceremony, the one where the Alpha King would choose, before all the new representatives of the royal house. I should have been there, beside my half-sister who now smiled at the world with the pride she inherited from our stepmother. She always wanted to erase me, and today she would have the stage all to herself. But then, something in the air shifted. A wind swept through the window, bringing with it the sound of horses' hooves, trumpets, the collective murmur that always precedes his arrival. The king. I had never seen him up close, but everyone spoke of his presence as if it were a living force, the kind of man who made silence bow. They said his gaze was so intense no one could hold it for long, that his voice carried the weight of unbreakable promises. In that instant, the world seemed to pause. A metallic clang echoed down the corridor, the sound of the bolt being moved. The door opened slowly and one of the maids entered, breathless. Her eyes were wide, as if she'd seen something impossible. She murmured. "He stopped the ceremony, said he smelled a scent that didn't belong to anyone present, and he ordered them to search the entire house." My heart faltered in my chest. The scent. It was impossible. I wore no perfume, just the simple soap left in the washroom. And yet, it seemed the very air betrayed me, as if something in me, invisible and ancient, called to him. The maid pulled me, distraught, helping me quickly put on the wrinkled dress. Voices grew louder outside, footsteps multiplied in the corridor. And then, for the first time, I heard his voice. Deep, drawn out, cutting through the space like a blade sheathed in silk. "Open all doors." It was as if the sound of his command pierced the floor, the walls, and found its way to my skin. I didn't need to see him to feel he was there, close. With each breath, the air seemed thicker, laden with something I couldn't name. When the door opened completely and he appeared on the threshold, the world seemed to shrink. His presence couldn't be contained in the space. Tall, his dark cloak brushing the stone floor, his gaze swept the room until it settled on me. I felt the weight of that gaze as if it stripped me of all defenses. No one spoke. The maid recoiled, the voices ceased. He took a step forward. The air shifted. "It was you." His voice didn't ask for an answer. It was a statement. I wanted to speak, to explain, to deny, but nothing came out. "You shouldn't be here," he continued softer, "but destiny rarely asks permission." There was a murmur in the background. My stepmother appeared at the door, her face pale with disguised fury. She tried to intervene, but he merely raised a hand, and the gesture was enough to silence her. "Who dared to lock her away?" he asked without taking his eyes off me. No one answered, only the distant sound of wind seeping through the windows. "This young woman," he said, "finally will be escorted to the hall, but, Your Majesty," my stepmother tried, her voice trembling, "I claim her." The silence that followed was almost sacred. When they led me to the great hall, all eyes turned, inquisitive, curious, sharp. The ladies whispered, the men raised eyebrows, mouths dropped open in astonishment. With each step, I felt the weight of 1,000 judgments upon me. Still, I didn't avert my gaze. He walked beside me, and his mere proximity seemed to alter the air we breathed. There was something imponderable about his presence, a force that couldn't be explained, only felt. When we stopped before the altar, I could see the reflection of light in his eyes. There was curiosity there, fascination perhaps. "Your name?" he asked. I hesitated to answer. Not from fear, but from understanding that from that moment on, my voice would have a price. "I don't know if my name matters to you, Your Majesty," I murmured, but I was the one no one wanted to show. He smiled almost imperceptibly, a smile that felt more like a premonition. In the hall, the tension grew. My sister stared at me as if witnessing a sacrilege. My stepmother tried to disguise her defeat, but the colour had drained from her face. The king approached, bowing slightly, just enough for his voice to reach only me. "What is yours?" they tried to hide. "But what is mine, the whole world will hear." And then, before everyone, he touched my hand. A small gesture, and yet devastating. The entire hall held its breath. I should have felt fear. Instead, I felt the ground beneath my feet become firm for the first time. Later, when the hall doors closed and murmurs still echoed through the corridors, I realized something had changed forever. I, who was born in shadow, was now the center of the storm, and the Alpha King, that man with an iron voice and feverish gaze, had chosen me not out of convenience but out of instinct. I don't know what destiny holds, but from that moment I understood that certain chains don't break. They merely change form. And what he claimed before everyone was not just my body, but my burden, my story, and the silence I had carried since I was a girl. And maybe, just maybe, the echo of my scent still pursues him. My new reality began with the creak of the bedroom door to which I was led after the ceremony. It was larger than my entire old house, with midnight blue silk tapestries on the walls and a bed that looked like solidified cloud. A woman with grey eyes and perfect posture entered shortly after, carrying a small chest of dark wood. "I am Helena, the royal house's first lady-in-waiting," she said, without smiling but without hostility. "I am here to prepare you." "Prepare me for what?" I asked, my throat dry. She opened the chest and took out a crystal vial with an amber liquid. The fragrance emanating from it was like an ancient forest, a whisper of leaves and moss after rain. "To be who you are." I wanted to laugh, but the sound died on my lips. Who was I? The bastard who grew up in the dark corners of Count Morel's house, my supposed father. The servant disguised as a daughter whom my stepmother humiliated at every opportunity. The invisible one who, by some whim of fate, had caught the Alpha King's attention. "I don't know who I am," I confessed as she invited me to sit before the mirror. Helena began to undo my poorly tied hair with gentle but firm fingers. Through the reflection, her eyes met mine. "That's why you're here, because he sensed something no one else can see." Her words weighed like stones on my chest. The king didn't know my name, my story, my scars. What could be in me that aroused the interest of that overwhelming man? "Today's ceremony," Helena continued, brushing my dark hair, "was supposed to be just the formal recognition of the new representatives of the noble houses. But when the Alpha King arrived, he stopped in the middle of the hall. Everyone saw. He closed his eyes, inhaled deeply, and then changed. Something in him awakened, like an animal scenting distant prey. The brush glided in rhythmic, almost hypnotic movements, but my body was tense as a violin string about to snap. And then he ordered them to search the entire estate," I completed. Helena nodded, a strange glint in her eyes. He said, "There is someone here who is not being seen, someone with ancient blood. And when he found you, locked in that room," she paused, as if choosing her words, "well, no one has ever seen him like that. Ancient blood." The words echoed in my mind like a distant drum. I then remembered the stories my true mother told me before she died, when I was too young to understand. Stories about our ancestors, about the lineage that ran in our veins, older than the kingdom itself. "What does that mean?" I began to ask, but was interrupted by 3 firm knocks on the door. Helena dropped the brush and hurried to answer. Through the crack, I saw the stern face of a man in a scarlet uniform. "The council has been convened," he announced, "and her presence is requested." The air seemed to leave my lungs. The royal council was composed of the most powerful nobles in the kingdom, the guardians of the ancient laws. "Now?" Helena questioned, visibly disturbed. "Now." As she returned to me with a tense face, I realized my hands were trembling. Not from fear, but from a strange anticipation I couldn't explain. "Let's change your dress," she said, opening a wardrobe from which she took a piece of deep blue fabric. "Like the sky at the darkest hour of night." "I don't understand what's happening," I murmured, as she helped me with the elaborate clasps of the dress. None of us understand. But for centuries, the Alpha bloodline has not recognized someone like this, not since the union of the ancient houses. When the fabric slid over my skin, I felt as if I was wearing something more than a simple garment. It was as if each thread of that dress carried the weight of centuries, of untold stories, of sealed secrets. "What should I do before the council?" I asked, as she adjusted the last fold of the fabric. Helena looked at me with a new seriousness, almost maternal. "Speak the truth. Whatever it may be, the Alpha King will know if you lie. He always knows." The walk to the council chamber was the longest of my life. Each palace corridor seemed to stretch infinitely. Each ornate door concealed curious glances. Each whisper I heard as I passed carried my name, "Now." The guard escorting us walked at a metronomic pace, his posture rigid as a spear. When we reached the antechamber, decorated with ancient crests and tapestries telling the kingdom's history, Helena held my arm. "Remember," she whispered softly, "you have the blood. Whoever you are, it's no accident you're here." Before I could answer, the double doors opened, revealing an immense circular room lit by dozens of chandeliers. Around a black wooden round table, 10 figures sat, all dressed in dark tones, except for one. Him, the Alpha King, dressed in blood red. When I entered, all faces turned to me. I recognized some: the Duke of Almeida, the Countess of Carvalho, my own father, Count Morel, pale as wax, and, sitting beside him, my stepmother, whose eyes burned with hatred and fear. In the center of the table, an object covered by a velvet cloth. "Approach," the king's voice commanded, and my feet obeyed before my mind even processed the order. The silence was so dense I could hear the rustle of my own dress. When I stopped before the table, the Alpha King stood. The light of the chandeliers danced on his angular face, casting shadows that enhanced the predatory intensity of his gaze. "This is the young woman we found locked away, hidden during the ceremony," he announced, and his voice reverberated off the stone walls. "The daughter Count Morel's preferred not to present." My father seemed to shrink in his chair. My stepmother opened her mouth to protest, but a look from the king silenced her. "Your Majesty," intervened the Duke of Almeida, an elderly man with a white beard. "What is the purpose of bringing her to the council? This young woman has no relevance to the kingdom's affairs." The king didn't answer. Instead, he walked toward me, his firm steps echoing on the marble floor. When he stopped in front of me, so close I could feel the warmth emanating from him, he extended his hand. "Your blood," he said, in a tone that allowed no refusal. Before I could understand, he drew a small dagger from his waist. The metal gleamed in the golden light. Instinctively, I recoiled, but his eyes locked onto mine. "Do you trust me?" he asked, so low only I heard. I didn't know the answer. I didn't know him. But something within me, that same ancestral stubbornness that kept me standing despite everything, made me extend my hand. He made a small, precise cut on the tip of my finger. A drop of dark red blood welled up, almost black under the flickering light. With a fluid movement, the king turned to the table and pulled back the velvet cloth, revealing an object that made all the councillors gasp. It was a stone, the size of a clenched fist, opaque like onyx, but with veins that seemed to pulse with a light of their own. Violet. The bloodstone, someone murmured, and the name reverberated in my mind like an echo of something I should already know. The Alpha King held my hand and, with unexpected gentleness, pressed my wounded finger against the stone's surface. What happened next will forever be etched in my memory. The instant my blood touched the stone, the violet veins came alive, expanding like roots, glowing with painful intensity. A low hum filled the room, growing into a song, a wordless melody that seemed to come from the very walls. The stone began to pulse, like a living heart, and its light now illuminated the entire room with a supernatural glow. On the faces of the councillors, I saw astonishment, terror, reverence. Impossible, whispered the Duke of Almeida. The lineage was extinct. The king released my hand and turned to the council, his face now marked by an expression of contained triumph. As you can see, gentlemen, the ancient bloodline is not extinct. She stands before you. My stepmother rose, trembling with rage. This is some kind of trick. This bastard cannot be— Silence! The king's voice cut the air like a whip. You knew, didn't you, Countess? You knew who she truly was. That's why you hid her. That's why you humiliated her and tried to erase her. A bitter laugh escaped my stepmother's lips. Of course I knew. That woman, the Count's first wife, was a descendant of the ancient house. Do you believe I would allow her daughter to overshadow mine? Count Morel's finally found his voice weak and hoarse. I didn't know, Your Majesty. She told me the girl was mine, but I never suspected. Lies, the king's voice thundered. You knew from the moment she was born. Ancient blood manifests from the first breath of life. As they argued, I remained standing, feeling the hum of the stone resonate within me, as if awakening something dormant. Suddenly I understood the stories my mother whispered, the strange dreams that accompanied me since childhood, the constant feeling that there was something in me that didn't belong to that petty world where I was raised. Who am I asked, and my voice sounded louder and firmer than I expected. Everyone fell silent. The Alpha King turned to me and there was a new glint in his eyes, something between admiration and relief. You are the last descendant of the ancient house, the lineage that governed these lands even before mine. He paused, his eyes never leaving mine. And you are the only one who can help me save the kingdom from what is to come. The silence that followed was like an abyss opening beneath my feet. Suddenly, the weight of centuries of unknown history fell upon my shoulders. I, who never had a place, now discovered that my existence carried a purpose greater than I could ever imagine. And the man before me, the one who had claimed me without even knowing my name, now looked at me as if I were the answer to a question he had carried for a long time. The council chamber was emptied by order of the king. Only he, I, the old Duke of Almeida, and a man I didn't yet know, introduced as Vasco the Chronicler, remained. The bloodstone continued to pulse with a soft light, like a star imprisoned in stone. Tell me your name, the king asked, now with a different, almost gentle voice. Elara, I replied, savouring the truth of the name my mother had given me and which my stepmother had forbidden. My name is Elara. The king nodded, as if the name confirmed something he already knew. Elara, he repeated, and there was a special cadence in the way he pronounced each syllable. A name from the ancient tongue. It means, she who illuminates the shadows. Vasco, the chronicler, a slender man with eyes that seemed to have seen centuries pass, opened an ancient book on the table. The yellowed pages were covered in fluid script I had never seen. The signs are here, he said, pointing to symbols that seemed to dance under his touch. The conjunction of the 3 red moons approaches, and with it, the awakening of what sleeps beyond the northern wall. The Duke of Almeida sighed heavily. We thought they were just legends, stories to scare children. But reports from the outposts leave no doubt. The cold increases, animals flee, and there are things moving in the darkness. My eyes instinctively turned to the king. His face was marked by a seriousness that bordered on anguish. "What does that mean?" I asked, trying to understand what all those mysterious words had to do with me. The king rested his hands on the table, leaning slightly toward me. "It means the ancient pact is breaking. The guardians of the threshold, those your lineage helped imprison centuries ago, are returning. And without someone of the ancient bloodline, we cannot renew the seal." "I know nothing of pacts or guardians," I confessed, suddenly feeling small and inadequate. "I grew up believing I was just the rejected daughter of a country count." The king smiled, but there was more sadness than joy in his gesture. "That was deliberate. Your mother knew the danger you were in. The few remaining of the ancient lineage were hunted one by one." "Hunted? Why?" The old duke exchanged a meaningful look with the king before answering. "Because the power of the ancient bloodline is coveted by many, and because some believe its extinction would allow the barriers between worlds to fall completely." Shiver ran down my spine at those words. Worlds, barriers, each. New revelation opened doors to even greater mysteries. "Your mother," the king continued, "was a guardian of ancient secrets. She married Count Morels to protect the lineage. But someone found her." "She didn't die of fever," I whispered, a painful certainty growing in my chest. "She was murdered." The silence that followed was answer enough. Vasco, the chronicler, turned another page of the ancient book. On it, I saw the image of a woman raising her hands to the sky while lights danced between her fingers. "The ancient bloodline is not just a noble lineage," he explained. "It is a gift, a power that transcends common understanding. In the ancient tongue, you were called Astafari, those who speak with what lies beyond." "But I have no power," I protested. "I've never done anything extraordinary in my life." The king approached, his eyes fixed on mine with an intensity that made my heart race. "Are you sure, Ilara? Did nothing inexplicable ever happen when you were scared or angry? Did you never feel as if you could see beyond what others see?" His words awakened memories I had buried deep. The time when, hidden in the attic to escape my stepmother's punishments, the candles lit themselves around me. The nights I woke up speaking a language no one recognized. The vivid dreams of places I had never visited, but which seemed more real than the world I lived in. "How did you know I existed?" I asked the king. "How did you find me?" He hesitated as if weighing the words he was about to say. "I dreamed of you. For 3 nights in a row. I saw a woman with storm-like eyes holding the bloodstone, while the 3 red moons aligned in the sky." His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "And then I understood it wasn't just a dream. It was a calling. The Alpha King also possesses special blood," the Duke explained. "Not as ancient as yours, but powerful in its own way. The Alphas have always been able to sense the presence of those who carry the ancient bloodline." Suddenly, a piece clicked into the puzzle forming in my mind. "That's why you sensed me at the ceremony. It wasn't a common perfume you detected." The king nodded. "It was your essence, something not even walls can contain." A strange sensation grew within me. Fear, fascination, and an unsettling sense of purpose. For years I had lived as a shadow in the Count's house, a mistake to be hidden, a burden to be tolerated. Now I discovered that my existence carried meaning, a meaning that could save or condemn an entire kingdom. "What should I do?" I asked, and my voice sounded different to my own ears, firmer, more determined. The king approached and, in a gesture that surprised me, took my hands in his. His touch was warm, almost feverish. "We need to awaken your dormant gift, Ilara, and we need to do it before the 3 moons align. How much time do we have?" 30 days, Vasco the chronicler replied, closing the book with a dull thud. "If we don't renew the seal by then, the guardians of the threshold will cross the barrier, and then no kingdom will be safe." I looked at my hands, still in the king's, ordinary hands with nails bitten by anxiety and calluses formed by hard work. Hands that, according to them, carried the power to save a world. What if I can't? The question escaped before I could contain it. The king squeezed my hands lightly, his eyes never leaving mine. "You will. because you are not alone on this journey." There was promise in his words and something deeper, a connection that couldn't be explained by duty or destiny alone. It was as if, somehow, our existences were intertwined by invisible threads that transcended time. And it was in that moment, under the glow of the bloodstone and the weight of revelations that changed everything I believed myself to be, that I made my decision. Not out of obligation, not out of fear, but out of a certainty that came from the depths of my being. This was the path I was meant to walk. This was the purpose for which I had been born, even without knowing it. "Teach me," I said, and the words sounded like an oath. "Teach me everything I need to know." The dwelling to which I was taken was in the palace's east tower, the closest place to the sunrise, where the first rays of the sun touched the ancient stone. It wasn't an ordinary room, but a set of circular chambers, with walls covered in carved symbols and high windows that framed the sky like portals to another world. These were the chambers of the last bearer of the ancient bloodline who lived in the palace, Helena explained as she lit perfumed oil lamps. "Princess Lyria, your ancestor, who disappeared almost a century ago." My fingers traced the symbols on the wall, feeling the stone cold, yet strangely vibrant beneath my touch. What happened to her? Helena's face tightened slightly. No one knows for sure. They say she left on a mission beyond the northern wall and never returned. Others... She hesitated. Others say she was betrayed by those who feared her power. I approached the highest window. From there, I could see the palace gardens, the city stretching beyond the walls, and further away, almost on the horizon, a dark line cutting across the landscape. "Is that the northern wall?" Helena nodded, joining me. "It stretches for hundreds of leagues, from the Crystal Sea to the Iron Mountains. It was erected by the bearers of the ancient bloodline and the first Alphas, to contain what lies beyond." "And what lies beyond?" Her eyes met mine, dark and worried. "Too many stories for one night, my lady. Now you need to rest. Tomorrow your training begins." She left me alone with my thoughts and the weight of everything I had discovered on that extraordinary day. I lay down on the wide bed, wrapped in linen sheets that smelled of lavender and something else. An ancient aroma, like pages of forgotten books. Sleep, when it came, brought dreams unlike anything I had ever experienced. I saw a woman with my face, but clothes from another time, standing before a wall of black stone. Her raised hand commanded lights that danced in the air, while an ancient voice whispered words in a language I didn't know, but understood. Blood seals what blood opened. What was forgotten will be remembered. What was lost will be found. And then the scene changed. I saw the Alpha King, younger, on a battlefield, his red cloak stained with blood that wasn't his. Around him fallen bodies and creatures that weren't human with translucent skin and empty eyes. And in the distance, observing everything, a hooded figure whose face remained in shadow. I woke with the first ray of sun touching my face, my heart racing and an unsettling certainty. Those weren't just dreams. They were memories, not mine, but of the blood that ran in my veins. I had no time to process the night's visions. Barely had the sun fully risen when firm knocks sounded at the door. It was Vasco, the chronicler, accompanied by a woman of indeterminate age, whose silver hair contrasted with her unwrinkled brown skin. "This is Nara, guardian of the elements," Vasco introduced. "She will begin your training." Nara studied me with eyes that seemed to see far beyond my physical appearance. "The blood is diluted, but still flows," she said, more to herself than to us. "Let's see if it can still awaken." The days that followed were the most intense and disconcerting of my life. While the kingdom continued its routine, unaware of the approaching danger, I delved into a world of ancient knowledge and practices that challenged everything I believed possible. Nara taught me to feel the energy flowing around me, in the palace stones, in the tree leaves, in the very air I breathed. For hours on end, I sat in the center of a circle of crystals, trying to light a single candle with the power of my mind. "Don't force it," she instructed, when, frustrated, I felt tears of anger well up. The gift doesn't respond to force. It responds to intention, to connection. Vasco, in turn, instructed me in the history of the kingdom, in the ancient language, and in the symbols of power that the bearers of the ancient bloodline used to channel their abilities. Your lineage was not just one of rulers, he explained, showing me illuminated manuscripts in books so old they seemed to disintegrate at the touch. They were guardians of the balance between worlds, beings who could see and interact with realities that ordinary people don't even dream exist. At night, exhausted and often disheartened by my slow progress, I retired to my chambers. It was on one of those nights when despair was beginning to set in that I received an unexpected visit. The Alpha King appeared at my door without warning, without guards, without his ceremonial cloak. He wore simple, almost austere clothes, which in no way diminished his imposing presence. "May I enter?" he asked, and there was something different in his voice, a vulnerability that didn't match the image I had formed of him. I nodded, aware of my own disheveled appearance after hours of frustrating exercises. He walked through the room, observing the symbols on the walls with a familiarity that intrigued me. "How is your training progressing?" "Slowly," I admitted. "Perhaps slower than the kingdom can afford to wait." He approached, and in the reduced space between us, I could feel something vibrating, an energy that was not just his or mine, but something that arose from the meeting of our presences. "The gift always awakens at the right moment," he said, his voice low, almost intimate. "It was like that for me." I looked up, surprised. "You went through this too?" A sad smile touched his lips, in a different way. "My blood is not like yours, but it also carries power and responsibilities. What is the nature of your gift?" He hesitated as if the question touched something deeply personal. "Alphas feel. Where others see only surfaces, we perceive what pulses beneath. We sense the intention behind words, the truth behind lies." His eyes met mine with disturbing intensity. "And sometimes, rarely, we feel the presence of someone whose destiny is intertwined with ours." My heart quickened. There was something in his words, in the way his eyes never left mine, that transcended our already extraordinary situation. "Is that why you found me? Is that why you sensed my presence at the ceremony?" He took a step forward, further narrowing the distance between us. "That's why I dreamed of you even before I knew you existed." In that moment, something within me stirred, not just emotionally, but like a physical current running through every cell of my body. The nearest lamp flickered, and then, without warning, all the lights in the room intensified, shining with a bluish glow that didn't come from oil or fire. The king's eyes widened slightly. "You see?" he murmured. "The gift responds not to the mind, but to the heart." I looked at my hands, which now seemed to emit a soft glow, as if the light from the lamps was being filtered through my skin. "What's happening to me?" I whispered, scared and amazed at the same time. Instead of answering with words, he extended his hand, lightly touching my face. The instant of contact, the glow intensified, and something like an electric current passed between us, not painful but powerful, as if a circuit had been completed. "Our bloodlines recognize each other," he said, his voice little more than a whisper. "As foretold in the ancient chronicles." "What chronicles?" "When the last child of night finds the last child of light, the seal can be renewed." His words resonated within me, awakening echoes of memories that weren't mine, visions of a time when our ancestors had first united to protect the world against forces that threatened to devour it. "You are the child of night." I understood, feeling the truth in my own words. "And I—" "You are the child of light," he completed. "The two sides of the same seal." When his hand left my face, the glow diminished, but didn't completely disappear. It was as if something had been awakened and now refused to fall asleep again. "What happens now?" I asked, still trying to process everything I had just experienced. His eyes were different, softer, more human than ever. "Now you train with renewed purpose. And he paused, as if measuring his words. "I prepare the kingdom for what is to come." He turned to the door, but before leaving, he turned to me one last time. "Ilara, My name on his lips sounded like an ancient song. "You are not alone on this journey. Remember that in the darkest hours?" And then he was gone, leaving behind a room that still shone with supernatural light, and a woman transformed not only by the awakening of a dormant power, but by the certainty that her destiny was intertwined with that of a king who carried his own ancestral burden. That night, for the first time since I arrived at the palace, I slept without disturbing dreams. Instead, I felt enveloped in a peace that emanated from within, as if a part of me that had always been restless had finally found its place. Dawn brought a different day. When Nara came to get me for training, her eyes widened when she saw me. "Something has changed in you," she said, circling me with slow steps. "The blood has awakened." I didn't tell her about the king's visit, about the touch that had ignited something within me. It felt too intimate, too personal. "I've only just begun to understand," I replied. That day's training flowed differently. The candle that had stubbornly remained unlit now ignited with a simple gesture from me. The stones that were supposed to move by the force of my will slid as if they had a life of their own. "Extraordinary," murmured Vasco, who was observing from a corner. "In one night you advanced what would normally take weeks." As they celebrated my progress, my thoughts wandered to the Alpha King. Where was he now? What was he doing to prepare the kingdom? And why, despite everything I had discovered about my own identity, was the memory of his touch what disturbed me most? The days that followed were a race against time. Each morning I awoke with new abilities, as if knowledge was being unlocked within me not by study or practice, but by the simple act of allowing something dormant to finally emerge. On the third night after my gift awakened, a delegation arrived at the palace. From my window I saw knights wearing colours I didn't recognise, black and silver, with banners featuring a howling wolf. "They are emissaries from Nordheim," Helena explained, as she styled my hair into an elaborate coiffure. "The kingdom beyond the eastern mountains. What do they want?" She hesitated, her fingers pausing momentarily in my hair. "They say they come on a diplomatic mission, but there are rumours," her voice lowered, "rumours that they also sense the change in the air, that they know about the alignment of the red moons." A formal dinner was announced for that night, and for the first time since my arrival, I was officially invited to attend. The dress they brought was unlike anything I had ever worn. Deep blue silk, embroidered with silver threads that formed constellations that seemed to move as I walked. "This was Princess Lyria's ceremonial dress," Helena said, helping me adjust it. "The king ordered it to be adapted for you." When I entered the banquet hall, a momentary silence fell over the assembly. The court nobles, many of whom still looked at me with suspicion, the foreign emissaries in their black cloaks, and him, the Alpha King, seated at the head of the long table, his eyes meeting mine the instant I crossed the threshold. I was escorted to the seat of honour to his right. A murmur ran through the hall. That position, traditionally reserved for the Queen, had been empty since the death of the king's wife, which occurred years before my arrival. "They are confused," the king whispered when I sat down. "They don't know if you are an honoured guest or something more." "And what am I?" I asked, low enough for only him to hear. His gaze was intense, but there was an almost amused glint in it. "To them, you are a mystery. To me," he paused, "to me you are the missing piece of a puzzle I have carried for a long time." Before I could answer, the emissaries from Nordheim stood, led by a tall, pale man with hair so blonde it appeared almost white. "Your Majesty," he said, his deep voice resonating through the hall. "I bring greetings from King Alaric of Nordheim, and a warning." The Alpha King nodded, indicating he should continue. The signs are clear to those who know how to read them. The cold increases in the north. Creatures that should not exist have been sighted beyond the wall, and the 3 red moons approach their alignment. An uneasy murmur ran through the hall. Many of the nobles present did not know about the imminent threat. The king had kept the knowledge restricted to his closest council. "We are aware of the signs, Lord Elric," the king replied, his voice firm, "and we are taking the necessary precautions." The emissary's gaze wandered around the hall until it landed on me, and something in his clear eyes lit up. Recognition, surprise, and something else. Something that made me instinctively recoil. "I see you have found a bearer of the ancient bloodline," he said, and there was a strange, almost accusatory tone in his voice. "A rarity these days?" The king placed his hand on the table near mine in a gesture that seemed casual, but conveyed a clear message of protection. "Lady Alara is under my protection and tutelage." Lord Elric smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Indeed, Nordheim merely wonders if a single bearer will be enough to renew the seal. Ancient texts speak of a ritual that requires pure blood, not diluted by centuries." "Lady Alara's blood is more than adequate." The king's voice took on a sharp tone. The bloodstone recognized it without hesitation. The emissary bowed his head slightly, in apparent deference, but his eyes remained fixed on me, evaluating. "Then Nordheim offers its alliance in these dark times. Our own mages and seers are at your disposal." "Your offer is received with gratitude," the king replied diplomatically, but I could feel the tension in his posture. Nordheim has always been a valuable ally. The dinner proceeded with forced pleasantries, but the air was charged with undercurrents. Political, mystical, dangerous. I noticed that many of the nobles studied me when they thought I wasn't looking. Some with curiosity, others with suspicion, and a few with barely disguised fear. Later, when the banquet ended and the guests dispersed, the king led me to one of the palace's inner gardens. The night was clear, starry, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of night-blooming flowers. "I don't trust the emissaries from Nordheim," he said, without preamble when we were far from curious ears. "Why? They seem to offer help." He sighed, his eyes scanning the starry sky above us. "There are ancient stories about Nordheim, about how their first king ascended to power. They say he captured a bearer of the ancient bloodline and—" He hesitated, "and used her blood not to seal the barrier, but to create a controlled passage, a portal that allowed him to make pacts with what lies beyond." A shiver ran down my spine. "Do you think they want to do the same with me?" His eyes met mine, intense even in the dim light of the garden. "I don't know, but I don't like the way that emissary looked at you, as if you were an object to be acquired." I then remembered Lord Elric's gaze, cold, calculating as if he were evaluating not a person, but an instrument. "What will we do?" The king approached, and under the starry sky, his face seemed sculpted from shadows and light. "We need to accelerate your training, and we need to strengthen the kingdom's defenses. The wall is weakening faster than we expected." "How do you know?" "I received news from the outpost today. There are things crossing in small numbers, creatures that are not of this world." My heart pounded. The threat, which until then had seemed distant, theoretical, suddenly became real, tangible. "I am ready," I affirmed, with more conviction than I truly felt. "For whatever is necessary?" He studied me for a moment and then, in a gesture that surprised me, took my hand in his. "There's something I need to show you. Something few eyes in this kingdom have seen." He guided me through paths that wound through the gardens to a circular structure hidden by flowering vines. It looked like an ancient temple, its columns worn by time, the symbols carved into the stone almost erased by centuries. "What is this place?" "The Star Temple," he replied, leading me inside. "One of the few places where the barrier between worlds is naturally thinner." The interior was even more impressive than the exterior. The vaulted ceiling was open to the sky, and the black marble floor was carved with a map of constellations so intricate it seemed to move beneath our feet. In the center, a pedestal supported something I recognized immediately: the bloodstone. "The ritual to renew the seal will happen here," the king explained, "when the 3 red moons align directly above this temple." I approached the stone, which pulsed softly, as if recognizing my presence. When I touched it, a shiver ran up my arm, and fragmented images flooded my mind. A woman with a face similar to mine, blood dripping from a cut on her palm, light streaming from the pedestal and projecting into the sky, and then darkness. I recoiled, gasping. I saw something, a woman, blood, light. The king steadied me by the shoulders. his eyes searching mine with concern. What else? I tried to organize the chaotic images still reverberating in my mind. Darkness. In the end, only darkness. He nodded, as if the answer confirmed an ancient fear. The ritual demands sacrifice, Ilara. Not just blood, but life force. The bearers of the past, he hesitated. Not all of them survived. The truth hit me like a physical blow. Suddenly, I understood the real weight of what awaited me. It wasn't just power and recognition. It was risk. It was possible death. Why didn't you tell me before? His expression was one of genuine sorrow. Because I feared you would flee. That you would reject your destiny. He held my face in his hands in a surprisingly gentle gesture for someone so powerful. But you deserve to know the truth. You deserve to choose. Choose? Yes, if you wish to continue this path, knowing what it might cost. Or if you prefer to leave, to hide as your mother tried to do. I will not stop you. The offer was tempting. To flee. To escape the weight of a destiny I never asked for, of responsibilities that seemed too great for my shoulders. But then, I remembered the visions, the dreams, the blood that ran in my veins, not just mine, but of all the bearers who came before me, who made their choices and carried their burdens. If I leave, I asked, my voice firmer than I expected, what will happen to the kingdom? To the people? His eyes were dark when he replied. Without the seal renewed, the barrier will fall completely. And what lies beyond, he shook his head, is not something this world is prepared to face. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the choice I had to make. A choice that would define not only my future, but the future of an entire kingdom. If this is my destiny, then I accept it, I said finally. Not out of obligation, but by choice. Something changed in his gaze. Relief, admiration, and something deeper, more personal. You are stronger than you imagine, Ilara. I have to be. We remained there. In the ancient temple under the starry sky, our shadows cast on the cosmic map beneath our feet, two destinies intertwined by forces beyond our understanding. A king and an orphan, united by ancestral blood and the weight of a world that depended on us. And for the first time since I discovered I was a bearer of the ancient bloodline, I felt not only fear but also purpose. A purpose greater than any dream I could have cultivated in my lonely years in Count Mirel's house. If the price of a kingdom's salvation was my sacrifice, then perhaps, just perhaps, my life would finally have the meaning I had always sought in silence. News of the presence of a bearer of the ancient bloodline spread through the kingdom like wildfire. In the days that followed, delegations from all provinces began to arrive at the palace. Curious nobles, scholars eager for knowledge, and common folk who travelled for days just to catch a glimpse of the woman who, according to rumours, would save the world from the impending darkness. My training intensified. Nara now pushed me beyond limits I believed possible, and my body and mind often collapsed from exhaustion by the end of the day. It wasn't just control of the elements I learned, but the ancient language of power, the symbols of protection, and the rites that would be necessary on the day of the alignment. Your blood is strong, but it's diluted by generations, Nara would say, as she watched me channel energy to create a barrier of light around a small stone. You'll need more strength than your ancestors. And where will I find that strength? I asked, feeling the exhaustion weigh on my shoulders. Her eyes were enigmatic when she replied, in sacrifice. Ilara, in love and in pain. The emissaries from Nordheim remained in the palace, observing my progress with veiled interest that made me uneasy. Several times I caught Lord Elric watching my training from afar, his face an impassive mask that revealed nothing of his true intentions. On a particularly exhausting afternoon, when I finally managed to create a shield of light that covered the entire training courtyard, he approached, clapping slowly. Impressive. Lady Ilara, he said, his voice soft as silk. Your ancestors would be proud. I lowered my arms, feeling the shield dissipate like mist in the sun. Have you met others like me? I asked, curious despite my distrust. Something gleamed in his pale eyes. Yes. In Nordheim, knowledge of the ancient bloodline is preserved. We have records, Relics. And bearers? His smile widened slightly, enigmatic. Perhaps the world is larger than this kingdom, Lady Alara, and there are secrets kept in the northern mountains that would change your understanding of your own nature. Before I could question him further, Vasco appeared, his face tense. Lady Alara is requested by the king, he said formally, but his gaze conveyed a clear message: caution. I bade Lord Elric farewell with a brief nod and followed Vasco through the palace corridors. Don't trust him, the chronicler murmured when we were far enough away. The men of Nordheim have their own ambitions. What do they really want? Vasco looked around, making sure we were alone. There are rumours that Nordheim doesn't want to seal the barrier, but to control it, to create portals that allow commerce with what lies beyond. Commerce? With those creatures? The old chronicler's face was grim, not just with the creatures, but with their masters. Beings of unimaginable power who offer knowledge and power in exchange for access. A shiver ran down my spine as I imagined the kind of negotiations that could occur between our world and what existed beyond the wall. What could beings from another plane of existence want from us? And what would they be willing to offer in return? We found the king in the map room, a circular chamber where a huge three-dimensional map of the kingdom stretched from wall to wall. Small red lights flickered at various points along the representation of the northern wall. Incursions, he explained without preamble, when I entered. Each light represents a point where the barrier has been breached in the last 24 hours. I approached the map, noting the alarming number of red lights. So many. He nodded, his face etched with worry. They are increasing exponentially. 2 weeks from the alignment, the barrier is crumbling faster than we anticipated. What can we do? The king exchanged a meaningful look with Vasco before answering. We need to temporarily strengthen the barrier until the day of the ritual. And for that, he hesitated, we need an immediate source of power. I understood what wasn't being said. My blood. He nodded, reluctantly. A minor ritual, for containment. Not as demanding as what is to come, but still. Dangerous, I completed. Yes. I looked again at the map, at the red lights that seemed to multiply as we watched. Each one represented a breach through which creatures from another world could enter. Creatures that, according to everything I had learned, brought not only physical destruction, but spiritual corruption. When? Tonight, the king replied. In the Star Temple, under the waxing moon. That night, as I prepared for the ritual, an unexpected visitor knocked at the door of my chambers. It was my half-sister Coralina, the legitimate daughter of the Count, and the stepmother who had scorned me so much. She was thinner than I remembered, her once arrogant face now marked by deep dark circles and an expression I had never seen on her. Fear. Ilara, she said, hesitant at the threshold. May I come in? I nodded, too surprised to refuse. I hadn't seen her since the day of the ceremony, when the king had found me locked in that room. She entered, her eyes scanning the luxurious chambers with a mixture of envy and resignation. Mother is furious, she said finally. She says you deceived us all, that you always knew of your lineage. I shook my head, incredulous. How could I know? You kept me in ignorance, hidden like a shameful secret. Coralina sighed, sitting on the edge of a chair as if afraid to settle completely. It was her who insisted. Father wanted to... She hesitated. He wanted to recognize you publicly, give you the family name. But my mother threatened to expose a secret of his if he did. What secret? She looked away. That he is not your true father. The revelation should have shaken me, but... strangely, it only confirmed something I had always suspected. Count Morels, with his perpetually uncomfortable face when he saw me, his words always careful, as if he feared revealing too much. Who is he then? Coralina shook her head. I don't know. My mother never said. She just used it as a weapon against both of you. A heavy silence fell between us. Two women raised as sisters who never truly knew each other. Why are you here, Coralina? She looked up, and for the first time I saw something like shame in her gaze. To warn you, my mother, she made a deal with the men of Nordheim. Something about you, about your blood. My heart pounded. What kind of deal? I don't know the details. I only heard fragments of conversations. But they planned something for tonight during the ritual. She stood up, nervous. Be careful, Ilara. They are not what they seem. Before I could press her for more information, she turned to the door. Why would you help me now? I asked, after years of scorn. She stopped, her back to me, her shoulders tense. Because I saw what's happening out there. The creatures that crossed the wall. Her voice faltered. One of them entered our estate. It killed 3 servants before the guards could contain it. And its eyes. She turned, and there was genuine terror on her face. Its eyes were empty, Ilara, as if looking from somewhere else, from another world. When she left, I rushed to inform the king of the warning. I found him in the Star Temple, overseeing the preparations for the ritual. Black wax candles were arranged in concentric circles around the central pedestal, where the bloodstone awaited, pulsing softly. Upon hearing of the conspiracy, his face hardened. We suspected something like this. The men of Nordheim have been restless, asking questions about the ritual, about you. What will we do? He looked around, at the almost completed preparations. We will change the location of the ritual. There is another temple, smaller, older, in the catacombs beneath the palace. Few know of its existence. The decision was made quickly. While visible preparations continued in the Star Temple, a second set of secret preparations was initiated deep within the palace. The catacombs were a labyrinth of tunnels and chambers carved into the living rock beneath the city. The air there was dense, heavy with the weight of centuries. The underground temple to which I was led seemed even older than the Star Temple. Its walls covered not in polished marble, but in rough stone where primitive symbols had been carved. This place was built by the first bearers of the ancient bloodline, even before the kingdom's founding, Vasco explained, as he lit torches around the circular chamber. It is more raw in its power. In the center, instead of an elaborate pedestal, there was a simple black stone basin. Beside it, Nara prepared a thick, steaming liquid that exuded an aroma of herbs and something else. Metallic, like blood. The ritual will be different here, she said without looking up from her preparation. More direct, more dangerous too. I looked at the king, who oversaw everything with a grave expression. You mentioned it would be dangerous. How much? He approached, lowering his voice so only I could hear. Blood is only part of the ritual, Ilara. The other part is your life force, your essence. The ritual will drain some of it. How much? I insisted. His eyes met mine, and in them I saw genuine concern. We don't know for sure. It depends on your resilience, your will. He lightly touched my face. That's why you need to be absolutely certain. Once initiated, the ritual cannot be interrupted. I remembered the red lights on the map. My half-sister's words about the creature that had invaded our family's estate, the empty eyes she had described with such terror. I am certain, I affirmed, and my voice didn't tremble. The ritual began at midnight. When the crescent moon reached its zenith, Vasco, Nara, the Alpha King, and I were the only ones present in the underground chamber. I wore a simple white tunic, my bare feet on the cold stone floor. Nara guided me to the black stone basin, now filled with the liquid she had prepared, a mixture of herbs, oils, and substances I preferred not to identify. When I say the word, immerse both hands in the liquid, she instructed. You will feel a burning sensation. Do not withdraw your hands, no matter how painful it is. I nodded, my heart quickening in anticipation. Vasco began to chant words in the ancient language, sounds that reverberated off the chamber walls, creating echoes that seemed to answer each other. The Alpha King positioned himself directly in front of me on the other side of the basin. I am with you, he said, his eyes never leaving mine. Every step of the way. Nara lit dried herbs in a small brazier, and the aromatic smoke spread through the chamber, thickening the air. Then she nodded to me. I took a deep breath and plunged my hands into the liquid. The pain was instantaneous and brutal, as if my hands had been plunged into liquid fire. I bit my lip to keep from screaming, the metallic taste of blood mixing with the pungent smell of burning herbs. Vasco increased the volume of his chanting, the words now flowing at a faster, more urgent rhythm. The liquid in the basin began to glow, first with a soft effulgence, then with increasing intensity until it seemed to contain liquid light. The pain in my hands spread up my arms, reaching my chest, my heart. It was as if something was being extracted from me. Not just blood, but something more essential, more fundamental to my existence. My vision began to darken at the edges and my knees threatened to give way. It was then that I felt the king's hands gripping my wrists, holding me steady. He too had plunged his hands into the liquid, joining the ritual. "Together," he murmured, his voice strained with pain. "The blood of night and the blood of light. Together." A current of energy flowed between us, through the luminous liquid. It wasn't just my strength being drained now, but his too. A shared sacrifice that made the pain bearable. The light in the basin intensified until it was almost impossible to look directly at it. Vasco's chanting reached a crescendo, and then, with a sudden movement, Nara threw the bloodstone into the center of the basin. The explosion of light that followed was blinding. A column of pure energy projected from the basin, piercing the chamber's ceiling. The rock, the earth, the very palace above us, extending into the night sky. I felt my entire body vibrate with a power that wasn't mine, but flowed through me. Visions flooded my mind. The northern wall glowing with renewed strength, the breaches closing. The creatures that had crossed being repelled back to their world of origin. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it ended. The light extinguished and my knees finally gave way. I fell forward, and it was the king's arms that kept me from hitting the ground. "It is done," Nara whispered, her voice choked with exhaustion and admiration. "The seal has been strengthened. We have bought time." I tried to speak, but my throat was too dry, my body too drained. The king lifted me into his arms as if I weighed nothing, my head resting against his chest. "Rest now," he murmured. "You gave more than you should have." As he carried me out of the catacombs, through the winding passages that seemed to stretch infinitely, I heard Vasco say something about intruders in the Star Temple and men of Nordheim. But the words seemed to come from very far away, and the darkness closing around me was comfortable, inviting. The last thing I remember before losing consciousness was the beat of the Alpha King's heart against my ear. Strong, steady, like a silent vow that I was not alone on this journey. And then, only darkness. A darkness that, for the first time since I discovered my true legacy, didn't frighten me. Because now I knew that even in the deepest darkness, the light of the ancient bloodline, my blood, would find its way back. The dream was too vivid to be just a dream. Saw myself walking across a plain of silver grass under a sky where 3 moons shone. One red as blood, another white as bone, and the third black as obsidian. In the distance, a wall of pure light stretched until it was lost on the horizon. A figure awaited there. A woman whose face was strangely similar to mine, dressed in clothes from another time, perhaps another world. "You found me?" she said, her voice clear as crystal, though her lips didn't move. "Who are you?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. "I am Lyria, the one who came before, the one who failed." The admission caught me by surprise. Failed? How? Her smile was sad, laden with a sorrow that seemed to transcend time. "I trusted those I shouldn't have. I loved those who didn't deserve my heart." She extended her hand, touching my face with fingers that were both substance and light. "The ritual approaches, Ilara. The true ritual, under the 3 aligned moons." "I am ready," I affirmed, with more confidence than I truly felt. Her gaze was compassionate but firm. "No, you are not yet, because you still don't understand the true sacrifice that will be demanded. The king told me it could cost my life." Lyria shook her head, her dark hair rippling like water under the light. "Of the 3 moons. It is not your life that the ritual demands, Ilara. It is your humanity." I woke with a start, my heart racing, my skin covered in cold sweat. I was back in my chambers in the east tower of the palace. the morning light filtering through the high windows. Helena was by my side, applying cool compresses to my forehead. "Finally," she sighed, relieved. "You slept for 3 full days." I tried to sit up, but my body protested with pain. My hands were bandaged, and every movement sent waves of agony through my arms. "What happened?" My voice came out hoarse, rough. "The ritual was successful," Helena explained, helping me drink some water. "The barrier has been strengthened. The incursions have significantly decreased." "And the men of Nordheim?" Her face tightened. "They tried to intercept the ritual in the Star Temple. When they discovered the deception, they were furious, especially when they saw the column of light emerging from the catacombs." "Are they gone?" She shook her head. "No, they claim they are still on a diplomatic mission. But the king has doubled the guard around you. No one is permitted to approach without his direct authorization." The dream of Lyria still lingered in my mind, her enigmatic words echoing like a warning. "It is not your life that the ritual demands, Elara. It is your humanity." "I need to speak with the king," I said, trying again to sit up. "He will come to see you as soon as he knows you've awakened," Helena assured, gently preventing me from rising. "For now, you need to regain your strength." Reluctantly, I yielded. My body was still too weak, the exhaustion of the ritual weighing on me like a lead blanket. But my mind was alert, filled with unanswered questions. What did it mean to lose my humanity? And why had Lyria failed? What mistake had she made that I should avoid? The Alpha King came to visit me at dusk. When he entered my chambers, I immediately noticed the change in him. A subtle pallor, deep dark circles under his eyes, as if he too was recovering from a physical ordeal. "How do you feel?" he asked, sitting on the edge of my bed. "Like I fought an army and lost," I replied, trying to smile. "And you?" He smiled back, but the gesture didn't reach his eyes. "I will survive. It's not the first time I've offered my blood to strengthen the barrier." This caught me by surprise. "You've done that before?" He nodded, his gaze wandering to the window, to the sky that was beginning to tint with the colors of twilight. "The barrier has always been weakening, Elara. In recent years, I've used my own blood in minor rituals to keep it intact. But each time," he hesitated, "each time it's harder, less effective." "Why?" "Because alpha blood was not made for it. It is strong, but it doesn't have the same affinity with the barrier as the ancient bloodline." His eyes met mine. "That's why your arrival was so important. So providential." I remembered the dream again, Lyria's warning. "I had a dream," I confessed. "With a woman named Lyria. She said she was the one who came before." The king became still, his attention now completely focused on me. "What else did she say?" I told him about the dream, about the 3 moons, about the enigmatic warning regarding the true sacrifice the ritual would demand. When I mentioned she had failed, and that the failure was related to trusting those she shouldn't have, I saw something pass over his face, a flicker of emotion I couldn't decipher. "Lyria didn't fail," he said, his voice low, intense. "She was betrayed." "By whom?" He stood up, walking to the window, his profile silhouetted against the golden light of the setting sun. "By her lover. A prince of Nordheim who gained her trust, her heart, and then—" He paused as if the words were painful. "Delivered her to those who wanted to use her blood to open the barrier, not to seal it." The revelation was like a physical blow. "That's why you distrusted the emissaries from the start." He nodded, still with his back to me. "Nordheim never gave up on its plan. For generations, they have sought bearers of the ancient bloodline, not to protect them, but to use them. To open portals to the other side," I completed, remembering what Vasco had told me. "Yes. They believe they can control what lies beyond. Make deals, gain power." He turned, his eyes dark. "They are mistaken. No one controls what lies beyond the wall. Those beings merely allow us to think so, until it's too late." A heavy silence fell between us, laden with unspoken implications. "What happened to Lyria?" I asked finally. "Did she die?" The king returned to sit on the edge of my bed, closer now. "No one knows for sure. She escaped her captors and disappeared beyond the wall. Some say she died there. Others—" he hesitated. Others believe she found a way to seal the barrier from within, sacrificing herself in the process. His words awakened a memory from the dream. The wall of light that stretched to the horizon, Lyria standing before it like an eternal guardian. What if she's still there? I whispered. Somehow trapped between worlds? The king took my bandaged hand in his, with surprising gentleness. Then perhaps, when we renew the seal under the 3 moons, we can finally free her. There was something in his gaze, a vulnerability I had never seen before. That made me ask, "You knew her, didn't you?" He looked away but didn't release my hand. Yes, I was very young then, newly crowned. She was, a sad smile touched his lips, extraordinary. Bright as the sun, untamed as the wind. You loved her. It wasn't a question. His silence was answer enough. Suddenly, many things made sense. His immediate recognition of my blood, his fierce protection from the beginning, the way he looked at me sometimes. As if seeing a ghost. Is that why you sought me out? Because I remind you of her? His eyes met mine, intense, almost feverish. At first, perhaps. But now... He lightly squeezed my hand. Now I see you, Elara. Only you. With your own courage, your own strength. Something shifted in the air between us. A tension that wasn't uncomfortable, but laden with unexpressed possibilities, with feelings that grew silently like deep roots. What did Lyria mean about losing my humanity? I asked, breaking the moment before it became something neither of us was ready to face. The king slowly released my hand, his face returning to seriousness. The ritual under the 3 aligned moons is unlike any other. It not only seals the barrier, but strengthens it permanently. For that, he hesitated. The bearer of the ancient bloodline needs to become part of the barrier itself. What do you mean, part of the barrier? He took a deep breath, as if gathering courage to explain something painful. Your spirit, your essence, merges with the barrier. Your body remains, but transformed. Neither completely human nor completely something else. The horror of what he described grew slowly within me. It wasn't death that awaited me, but an existence between worlds, between states of being. Would I become like them? Like the creatures from beyond the wall? No, he replied firm. You would become the opposite. The antithesis, the counterpoint that prevents them from crossing. I struggled to comprehend what that meant. Not to die, but to cease being human. To continue existing, but in a form that perhaps could no longer feel, love, live as before. Why didn't you tell me before? His gaze was tormented when he replied, because I feared you would flee, that you would reject your destiny, and because, he paused, because I am too selfish to accept losing you so soon. The confession hung between us, fragile and powerful at the same time. Is there an alternative? I asked, my voice almost a whisper. He looked away. We are looking. Vasco and the other guardians are researching ancient texts, looking for alternative rituals. But time is short. The 3 moons will align in less than 2 weeks. 2 weeks. 14 days to find a solution or face the loss, not of my life, but of my humanity. Of the ability to feel, to touch, to love. My eyes met his, and in that moment I saw something that terrified and comforted me at the same time. He loved me. Not as a memory of Lyria, not as a tool to save the kingdom, but as Elara, the woman I was now, and I who had never known true love, who had grown up in the shadows, rejected and hidden, discovered this feeling precisely when destiny threatened to tear it from me. We will find a solution, he said, his voice firm, determined. I promise. But in his eyes, I saw the fear that mirrored my own. The fear that sometimes not even the most powerful love can change the course of destiny. The days that followed were a race against time. While I regained my strength, Vasco Nara and a team of guardians frantically searched the palace's oldest archives, seeking any mention of an alternative ritual, any indication that the sacrifice of humanity could be avoided. The Alpha King, in turn, redoubled the defences around the palace and increased surveillance on the Nordheim emissaries. Lord Elric and his men remained as guests, but were now discreetly followed by royal guards wherever they went. When I was finally able to leave my bed, 5 days after the ritual in the catacombs, I found the palace transformed. Troops arrived daily from the borders, and the city buzzed with rumors about the approaching threat. The night sky, once dotted only with stars, now showed the 3 moons drawing closer to each other, the red growing, the white diminishing, and the black emerging from the shadows like a slowly opening eye. 9 days, Nara said, when we met in the study room where the Guardians worked. The alignment will occur in 9 days. Books and scrolls covered every available surface, some so old they crumbled at the touch. Vasco, with deep, dark circles under his eyes and ink-stained hands, looked up when I entered. "Lady Alara," he greeted, tired but determined. "We were just discussing a possibility." I approached the central table where a star map lay open, showing the movement of the 3 moons. "What possibility?" Nara pointed to a symbol on the map, a spiral within a circle. The Calathea vortex, a place where the energies of the worlds naturally meet without the need for an artificially created portal. "And how does that help us?" Vasco exchanged a look with Nara before answering. "If we perform the ritual there instead of the Star Temple, the barrier can be sealed without requiring full merging. The vortex's energy would replace part of the sacrifice." A spark of hope ignited in my chest. "Where is this vortex located?" Their hesitation was answer enough. "Beyond the wall," Nara confirmed finally, "in the territory that now belongs to what we are trying to contain." Hope diminished, but didn't completely extinguish. "Then we need to get there. Cross the wall." "That would be suicide," protested one of the younger Guardians. "No one who has crossed the wall in the last 100 years has returned." "Lyria returned in my dreams," I replied with more confidence than I truly felt. "And there are those who believe she is still there somehow." The Alpha King chose that moment to enter the room. His eyes met mine immediately, as if he could feel my presence even before seeing me. "What are you discussing?" he asked, approaching the table. Nara explained the theory about the Calathea vortex. The king's face remained impassive as he listened, but I saw something light up in his eyes, the same flicker of hope I had felt. "Is it possible?" he asked when she finished. Vasco sighed heavily. "Theoretically, yes. The vortex could absorb part of the energy that would normally be extracted from the bearer of the ancient bloodline. But the risk? The risk is less than the certainty of losing my humanity here," I interrupted, my voice firmer than I expected. All eyes turned to me. "I will go to the vortex," I declared. "I will perform the ritual there." "You will not go alone," the king's voice cut the silence that followed. His eyes met mine, intense, determined. "I will accompany you." Protests immediately erupted. The Guardians, Helena, even some of the councillors who had joined the research, all speaking at once about the risk, the recklessness, the madness of such a plan. "Silence," the king's voice thundered, and everyone obeyed instantly. "The decision is made. Lady Alara and I, accompanied by a small group of the kingdom's most skilled warriors, will depart in 3 days for the Calathea vortex." His eyes swept over each face in the room. "Meanwhile, preparations for the traditional ritual will continue as normal. No one," he emphasized, "no one other than those present in this room must know of our true plan, especially the emissaries from Nordheim." After the meeting dispersed, the king led me to the palace gardens, where we could speak unheard. Twilight painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, and the first stars began to dot the firmament. "Are you sure about this?" he asked when we were finally alone, crossing the wall. "I'm more afraid of losing who I am than of dying trying to remain myself," I replied, with a sincerity that surprised me. He nodded, understanding. "If there's a chance, however small, to perform the ritual without sacrificing your humanity, then we must try." We walked in silence for some time, the night air heavy with the scent of flowers blooming under the starlight. "Why are you risking so much for me?" I asked finally. "The kingdom needs its king. You could send other warriors with me." His eyes met mine, and in them I saw a vulnerability rarely displayed, because I've lost someone to the wall once before. I won't lose again. "Lyria." He spoke of Lyria, but also, I realized with a start in my heart, he spoke of me. "We are not the same person," I said softly. "I am not her." His hand found mine, his fingers intertwining with mine with surprising gentleness for a man of such power. "I know that. And perhaps that's why—" He hesitated as if searching for the right words. "Perhaps that's why what I feel for you is different, more real, more mine." The meaning behind his words made my heart race. It wasn't just the echo of an old love he saw in me. It was something new, born of the trials we faced together, of the connection that transcended blood and duty. "What if we fail?" I whispered, fear finally finding a voice. "If we don't find the vortex, or if the ritual doesn't work as we expect?" He approached, and under the silvery light of the stars, his face seemed sculpted from light and shadow. "Then we will face what comes together." A promise, an oath. The words hung between us, laden with meaning beyond what either of us was ready to fully admit. That night in my chambers, I dreamed of Lyria again. This time she stood before the wall, but she was not alone. A male figure stood beside her, his back to me, but with a presence that was strangely familiar. "The path is dangerous," she said, her voice clear as running water. "But it exists." "Where?" I asked. "How will we find the vortex?" She raised her hand, and in the sky above, the 3 moons began to move, aligning not in a straight line as I expected, but forming a perfect triangle. When the 3 moons form the triad, the vortex will reveal itself. Follow the light that is not light, the path that is not a path. "I don't understand," I confessed, frustrated by the enigma. Her smile was gentle but sad. "You will understand when the time comes. But remember, Elara, the sacrifice will still be demanded. Only its nature may change." The figure beside her then turned, and with a shock I recognized the Alpha King's face, younger, less marked by the weight of the crown, but unmistakably him. "Protect him," Lyria whispered, her image beginning to fade. As I could not. I woke with my heart racing, Lyria's last words echoing in my mind. Outside my window, the night sky showed the 3 moons drawing closer, but not yet aligned in the triangular formation she had shown in my dream. I got up, unable to go back to sleep, and walked to the window. Down below, the palace gardens were silent, bathed in the silvery light of the moons. A solitary figure walked among the hedges, tall, broad-shouldered, unmistakable even at a distance. The Alpha King couldn't sleep either. Without a second thought, I donned a cloak over my nightclothes and went down to the gardens. I found him sitting on a stone bench contemplating a small pond where night-blooming water lilies opened their petals, luminescent under the moonlight. "Can't sleep?" I asked, sitting beside him. He didn't seem surprised by my presence, as if he somehow knew I would come. "Dreams," he replied simply. "And you?" "The same." We sat in silence for a few moments, the only sound the gentle lapping of the water and the distant chirping of night birds. "I dreamed of Lyria again," I confessed finally. "And of you?" His eyes turned to me, suddenly alert. "Of me?" I nodded. "You were together before the wall. She showed me how to find the vortex. When the 3 moons form a perfect triangle." He inhaled deeply, his gaze returning to the pond. "I also see her in dreams sometimes. Not with the clarity you describe, but echoes. Memories, perhaps. Or messages," I suggested. "Perhaps she's trying to help us wherever she is." A sad smile touched his lips. That would be typical of her. Always trying to save everyone, even when she was the one who needed saving. There was so much pain in his voice, so much unresolved love, that my heart ached for him. "What really happened between the 2 of you?" He remained silent for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, laden with memories. "We were young. I, newly crowned, carrying the weight of a kingdom. She, the last of her known lineage at the time, brilliant and untamed." He paused, his eyes lost in memories. "We fell in love against all expectations, against all advice. The court disapproved. They said she was dangerous, unpredictable, that her blood made her unsuitable to be queen. And you believed them?" He shook his head, a gesture heavy with regret. "No, but I hesitated. When I should have acted, when I should have protected her, I hesitated. And in that hesitation she was taken." His voice broke. The Prince of Nordheim, Kaelin, gained her trust, her heart, while I debated with the council, and when he took her beyond the wall, it was too late. The story was even more tragic than I had imagined. Not just betrayal and loss, but regret. The kind that corrodes the soul for decades. "It wasn't your fault," I said, my hand finding his on the stone bench. His fingers closed around mine, a squeeze that spoke of gratitude and something deeper. "When I found you, when I sensed your blood," he hesitated. "For a moment I thought Lyria had somehow returned, but then I saw you, truly you, and I understood that destiny had given me a second chance. Not to reclaim what I lost, but to do what's right this time." His gaze met mine, and even in the dim light of the garden, I could see the intensity of his emotions. "I won't repeat the same mistakes," he promised, his voice firm. "I won't let anything happen to you." "And I won't let you sacrifice yourself for me," I replied with equal intensity. "Whatever destiny awaits us beyond the wall, we will face it together, as equals." For a moment, time seemed to suspend. We were just a man and a woman sitting under the stars, united not only by the ancestral blood that ran in our veins, but by something more personal, more profound. Then, with surprising gentleness for someone of such power, he touched my face, his fingers tracing the line of my cheek as if memorizing every detail. "As equals," he repeated, a whispered vow in the night. And when his lips met mine, it was as if all the pieces of a cosmic puzzle finally fell into place. As if somehow my entire life of rejection and loneliness had been merely the winding path that led me to this moment, to this man, to this shared destiny. A destiny that, in 9 days, would be decided beyond the northern wall, under the watchful gaze of the 3 moons aligned in their perfect triangle.